Ruth, do you have any memories of your childhood in Poland before the Nazi occupation?
I'm glad you asked me that, because in my old age I often think about it. I actually had a fantastic childhood, very short, unfortunately, but I remember my father, who was a sort of amateur painter, wonderful craftsman, and he was making costumes for me and things like that. I remember him taking me skating. It was a wonderful childhood, but cut very short.
The Nazi occupation obviously changes your lives completely. What were the first things that you noticed?
Well, the first thing, we didn't know very much. I didn't know very much about it, and I was about 10 and a bit when the war broke out. So all I remember is that my father's two brothers came to visit him just before the outbreak of war and tried to persuade him to leave Poland and maybe come to then Palestine. And he said, "Good luck to you, but I'm not doing that." And the other thing I would like to point out, I was aware I was Jewish, but I didn't have, we were not religious. We were a very secular family. So I remember once a year, my father used to take me to synagogue with the New Year because he was interested in the shofar, which was an instrument that was being played. But not necessarily for religious reasons.
Were you called a Jew by others?
Well, first of all, I remember when I was, just before the war broke out, he sent me to a Catholic school because it was very close by. He had a number of Catholic friends, and the school had a very good reputation. So all I remember is being the only Jewish girl in the school that everybody knew, and leaving the class once a week because the priest used to come to give religious instructions. But that's about it. I remember I didn't feel different, or I wasn't made to feel different until I was there. I think, I never remember days, but for about 2 years. And I was outside playing, and all of a sudden, a girl from another class runs to me and said, "You killed our Lord, and you should be punished for it." And I said, "What? What? What are you talking about?" "Yes, that's true, I know." And I ran home crying, and I couldn't understand. I didn't know what was going on. And I think he then decided to take me out and maybe put me in the Jewish school, and the war broke out.
How was it that you went to the ghetto?
When the war broke out, very soon after, I don't remember exact dates, we had a visit from 2 Gestapo men dressed in black who announced that we have 15 minutes to pack and go. And we were completely unprepared for it. We lived in Radom in an area which was not particularly Jewish because we were quite assimilated and integrated. So we just couldn't understand. The one thing I remember is very strange. All these years ago, my mother, who was very much a working woman, down to earth, she was a designer of women's underwear, and she said to the Gestapo man, "You wear a black uniform, but your heart can't be so black." And he hit her. And all I remember is her face and the surprise. This is the first gesture and the first activity of that sort we were not prepared for.
You'd not faced violence before?
No, none. So we had to leave home. We had to take whatever was necessary, and we were marched to the ghetto in Radom. And it was the first time that we met a number of other Jews who were very religious with what payot, and not that we dislike each other, but we just were not in touch with this side of Judaism. And my father started thinking very quickly, and he said, this is a place, unless we do something, we will never get out.
Yeah.
And we could hear all kinds of noises, trucks coming, and heraus, people being taken away, put on the trucks, driven away. We didn't know what was going on. And I think my father suspected the worst. And again, this reminds me of this kind of childhood I had and the kind of parents I had. What he decided is that whatever happens, I must get out. With the help of some of his Catholic friends. How, I will never know. He arranged a false passport for me. Changed my name, false passport, and also my aunt was living with us, my mother's sister, and her 2 children were hiding somewhere, so she was with us. And he decided, my aunt and I have to go, have to escape somehow, and gave us these passports, and my name from Ruth became Irina or Irena or whatever. And what was discovered as well, and I'm sure his friends must have told him, that there was a little factory not very far from Warsaw, which was making leather goods like rucksacks and all sorts of things, and they employed slave labor. And somehow, and I really don't remember the details, my father arranged for me, with the help of his friends, and my aunt and me, to go there and become slave laborers. And they made me even a little bit older than I was in order to make it possible. And so we were in the factory, slave laborers. I have 2 left hands, and I've always left 2 left hands all my life. And I remember I couldn't sew properly, and I couldn't make the stitches. And I remember somebody coming, a woman actually, and slapping me because I wasn't doing a good job. So we stayed there for quite some time, exactly how long I can't remember, but the Germans were very hygiene conscious, and the hygiene conditions in the factory were terrible. So once a week, we were marched to the local bath place, and with the gendarmes on either side of us. And this was a kind of routine once a week, because by that time we were dirty, we had lice, it was a terrible conditions. Now, the building with the bath was actually opposite the Aryan side. It was the end of the ghetto. And I can't remember exactly how long, how many meters, on the other side, like on the other side of the road, was the Aryan side. And my aunt decided, if we can, we'll try to cross. Now, obviously, there were people who have done this before and didn't manage, were noticed and shot on the spot. My aunt said, look, if we stay here, eventually, there will be certain death. If we manage to cross, there's a possible death. I didn't understand quite exactly what she meant, but I knew I will obey her and do whatever she wants me to do. And she said, on one of those outings, there was, I can't remember how many weeks we were already there, but one of those she decided that's what we were going to do. We were going to cross the road. And she told me to watch her and wait. What she was doing is observing 2 gendarmes who were walking backwards and forwards, watching the space. And at one time, they lit a cigarette, turned their backs away and started talking. And my aunt said to me, now. This I really remember is quite amazing. And that feeling of shaking, and she said, don't run. We're going to walk like we're going for a walk. We still had the armbands with, David.
The Star of David.
The Star of David. She said, slowly take it off if we are past certain point, but don't run. And we did. And we crossed to the other side. And all of a sudden, I became now Irena, and she became Leonia. And she had some addresses of people who were my father's friends or acquaintances, where we could go, and we stayed.
When your father got you into the factory through the help of his friends, may I ask, was that the last time you saw him?
Yes. Now, I also remember we were driving off, and they were somewhere on the street on the other side waving. And he said, we do whatever we can. You have to get out from here, and we will do whatever we can to meet up, knowing that that was a very difficult thing to do. But the picture is there. As I speak to you, I see them. And it was the last time. But it is strange how I discovered actually what happened years and years ago. I decided I want to find out exactly where my parents were killed. So I went to the Vienna Library, thinking they have all the information. I explained what I was there for, and they said, look, unfortunately, we have a lot of information about Berlin, about Germany. There is very little information about Warsaw. And I said, okay, forget about it. I lived with it for so many years, forget about it. Now, the two women were German. They were young. They were not Jewish. They were working there. And they said to me, have you got time? Wait. Please wait. Have a cup of coffee and wait. I said, yes, sure. And they called Yad Vashem, which is the institution that has all the history of survivors. I waited there for about an hour or so, and they brought 2 sheets of paper, my father, my mother, and the details. Unfortunately, the worst thing was they were separated, and there was Treblinka. And I was, needless to say, I couldn't speak. But what I'm actually saying, and the reason why I'm telling the story, those 2 women, it was so genuine. It wasn't just a show. They were shaken. We huddled together. We cried. We were like family, like friends. There were 2 German women. And this is why I'm telling the story. And this is why never, never generalize.
Yes. How did the war end for you? When did you get your liberation?
We were in war, as I said, we were living in Warsaw during the Warsaw Christian uprising. So the Poles have rebelled, hoping the Russians would come, but they didn't. It didn't last very long. My aunt got very involved as a partisan, so I don't know whether she was looking at tanks or throwing bombs. I'm not sure. I was too young for all this. And we were there as the fight was going on. It didn't last very long, and of course the Germans won. After that, we were arrested. Well, she was arrested, and I was with her, and we were taken to the prisoners of war camp in Germany, in Detmold. Not as Jews, but as Poles who fought in the uprising. So the story continues, but here we are prisoners of war. The conditions were pretty awful, but it wasn't Auschwitz. And there were lots of number of other prisoners that we made friends with. And it was an incredible situation. I can't remember how long we were there. My aunt, I know, got involved in helping in the kitchen, which meant that occasionally she was able to take a little bit more bread, and we were starving, but there's no comparison to concentration camp. And then what happens? Another strange coincidence. The Germans are telling us, we're moving, we're going on train, we're moving, we're leaving Detmold. The train is passing through Essen. Essen is a big industrial German town. And all of a sudden, the train stops, and we hear noises. Aeroplanes flying, banging. What's happening? They're throwing bombs at the station. There were American bombers, knowing that, as I said, the war was coming to an end. This is an industrial town. There's a German train going through Essen. We're going to get rid of them. So there was a complete pandemonium. Everybody is rushing out from the train. And, of course, the Germans as well. And this I still remember. And it's unbelievable. I remember lying on the grass. The planes were coming down, and there were machine gunning people they saw. I remember a body falling on me. I remember peering out, and, this is it. I thought, I'm not going to survive this. I didn't know where my aunt went. I couldn't find her, and I thought, that's it. That's the end. And I can't remember how long I was there with my face right in the grass when I hear a voice of my aunt calling me by my Irena, and I couldn't believe it. The Germans were, of course, flustered, didn't know what to do. Everybody was running in different directions. And my aunt said, come on, let's run, come. And we started running. Where? I had no idea, but we ran into the little wood, and all of a sudden we see a hut and two German farmers peering out. And my aunt spoke very good German. And she said, look, we are prisoners of war. Could you please give us some water? Because we just survived an incredible incident. And they said, okay, come. Now, I shall never know whether they would have done the same had they known we're Jews. But as human beings, they said, you come. And I when I talk about it, I think, no, I'm not making it up. It really happened. We stayed there. My aunt was helping in the kitchen. I learned how to milk cows. And they were very nice to us. Now, I have to tell you another incident. We knew that the woman's, the main farmer's nephew was a German, and he was in the attic of the hut. He was right on the attic, and we saw him in the uniform, but he took his uniform off, and he was a German, but he was in the Wehrmacht. The Wehrmacht was just the ordinary army. He was not a Gestapo. We stayed there with those German capo and the farmers until the Allies came. The English and Americans come into looking around for Germans were hiding. They were looking for survivors. And they knock on the door and they come into the hut. My aunt explained, we're not Germans. And they said, we're looking for any Germans. Do you know any? And the woman, the farmer's wife, standing there, knowing my aunt knew exactly where her nephew was. And my aunt said, I don't know any.
These are amazing stories.
Well,
and your survival is so much against the odds, isn't it?
It is completely. So eventually they take us, the Allies, the English actually said, we have a compound, which is not very far from here. You and your aunt come with us. And they were helping, and I was laying tables, and my aunt was again helping in the kitchen. There was a man sitting at the table, Squadron Leader Scott. His name was Squadron Leader Scott in the British Air Force. My aunt is serving him breakfast, and it was eggs and bacon. And he said, tell the chef, this is for Squadron Leader Scott. I don't eat bacon. And she sort of, I don't know, made some gesture. And she noticed something. He said, could I have a word with you, please, afterwards? You were surprised when I said I don't eat bacon. Well, actually, I happen to be a Jew. But I'm a squadron leader. I am working for the Air Force. I am also looking for surviving Jews. Do you know any? Bushinini fell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you're talking to one, and this is my niece. And we are hiding. This is not our real name. He arranged for me to come to England.
You have been a dancer, a choreographer, a stage actor, a film actor, a television actor. Of all of those, which has given you the most pleasure?
Meeting a woman called Julia Pascal, who is a writer and a director. Because I want to say also that, now I'm talking about it and I'm quite at ease. But when I came here, I couldn't talk about it. I couldn't talk about any experiences. I didn't want people to feel sorry for me. I couldn't actually explain everything because some of it sounds to me even like a story that I can only make myself feel. Yes, it did happen. So I wasn't going to tell the story to people who are not familiar with the situation. So I was silent. I just wanted to study English, see how far I can go, and so on. So meeting this woman, Julia, I didn't know her interests, but there was a sort of a workshop going on, and the workshop was dealing with Chekhov and Beckett. And I thought, I have to know a little bit more about Chekhov and Beckett, and she was the instructress who was doing the workshop. And then we started talking, and when I explained to her, because she said, what an accent, what is it? And we started talking, and then she found out a little bit of the story. She said, well, no, I'm very interested in the background. I really am. And I'd like to write a play. And she wrote a play called Teresa, which had sort of my story in it. We did Teresa for about 14 years, on and off with big breaks. We did it in Vienna, we did it in Germany, we did it here in many different places. And I have an incredible story to say about what happened in Germany, because we were invited to perform this in Germany. And people said to me, you're going to Germany? Yes, you must be crazy. How come? How can you? And again, something I learned and feel very strongly about this generalization. I said, yes, now look, all these years have gone by. There is another generation. Of course I'm going to Germany. I experienced something there which was unbelievable, because in the local paper there was a little bit about the fact that I'm a survivor and that I'm Jewish and so on. And so this is Castle University. We're doing a matinee of the play called Teresa. And the German chancellor of the university comes out. And I have to tell you the honest truth of how I felt. For a second, he's Teutonic looking absolutely to the fingernails, tall, strong looking man, back and sides, shaven. And he comes to me and I sort of feel, and of course, closer to my generation. He opens his arms and he said to me, "You don't know what that means to me for you to be here. I was a Hitlerjugend during the war. I wore my uniform with pride. But I was 9 years old. The fact that you're here and what we're doing means a lot to me." Now, again, I'm not going now to go into the present situations because things change, because this is life, this is history, this is humanity. But those experiences meant so much to me. It's unbelievable. Because it was genuine. He didn't have to do it. He didn't have to say it.
You've said you're not going to talk about the present situation, but you were many years with the Holocaust Education Trust. Do you think that people in Britain, for example, today, in sufficient numbers, remember, understand, and believe that the Holocaust occurred?
Well, first of all, can I just say something which used to give me, until recently, used to give me a lot of strength and positive thinking. And that is the fact that I discovered, first of all, a number of young people working for the Holocaust Educational Trust who are not Jewish. And that filled me with incredible strength, a feeling of hope, a feeling that something has happened that changes the way human beings are beginning to think. Good and evil has always existed in the history of mankind. So it depends on how we cope with the evil, how we face up to it, how we can devote our thinking to changing it. But to answer your original question, it has made a lot of, I think it has made a lot of difference among young people, because I was not the only one giving the talks at schools and colleges. There were many, many others. So when there were many non-Jewish young people who went to visit Auschwitz, who learned more, who wanted to know more. So I think it has made some difference. Unfortunately, now the war and what's going on in Israel is absolutely terrible, and it makes me feel very depressed. Yes, I never knew that I would hear anti-Semitic remarks. I never knew that there is a little bit of a return to this thinking. But that's another story. We can talk about it and why and the politics of it. And it's depressing, yes.
You said you didn't want people to feel sorry for you. Television viewers today, who maybe are hearing your story for the first time, what should they take from your story?
To make sure that as we go on living, that this sort of thing will never happen again. I mean, I mentioned the good and the evil existing in mankind, but this is something. Slavery was a terrible thing that happened in history as well. But this is something which happened in a civilized country that gave us Beethoven and Schiller and Goethe, and also invented special gas to reckon of how many people can be killed in one go. It's incredible. And here I have to say something. I had 2 cousins, my aunts, who actually helped me to survive. She had 2 kids hiding in in a village with some farmers. They must have got some money for it, but they were looking after her children, both blonde, blue-eyed, one 6 and one 8. They were with the farmers. They were very happy there. And I shall never know to my dying days. They had a quarrel with a neighbor. And one of the neighbors knew that there were Jewish children just hiding there. And she must have squealed. She must have said it. There was a Gestapo man who came and he shot both of them. That has not happened in any other evil history of mankind. So for God's sake, we have to learn.